Coming up, Xander Bogaerts did not sign with the Dbacks and instead signed with another NL West team. What does it mean for the division and the Dbacks? And then we're looking at potential free agent targets to make us feel better about Xander Bogaerts not signing with our team. And then there's a team out there that's reportedly very interested in the D-backs outfielder. So we're going to break down that report as well on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I'm Millard Thomas, host of this wonderful podcast. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, MillardThomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 for my personal account, or just look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms that we need more help growing in is YouTube, so please hit subscribe on the Locked On Diamondbacks YouTube. Now, we're going to start this podcast off and get a little negative and get a little sad because last night, I got the worst news I could have seen on my Twitter account, the worst Twitter notification I could have gotten, because you guys know I'm a closet Red Sox fan. And as this D-backs host, I've really gotten invested in the NL West the last few years. And I got this friendly rivalry with all the NL West hosts. And one of those hosts is Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres. And we just got, friendly beef, but there's beef between our two teams when we do these podcasts, when we talk about these teams outside the podcast, when we watch these two teams play in real life. Like, these two teams definitely got a rivalry going, probably more one-sided for the Padres than anything else. But also personally, I got some Padres fans in my work office, and I love to clown them whenever I get the chance to. And after seeing that notification last night that Xander Bogaerts was signing with the San Diego Padres, I just, I don't know how I was supposed to feel last night, because there were just so many different emotions going through me. One, I was just absolutely heartbroken and devastated, because as the closet Red Sox fan, listen, I've been watching Xander Bogaerts since he broke into the league at age 19, age 20. This is someone that's been in my life for over a decade. As I started to hit the teenage years and puberty, this is someone that was taken off at the same time. I'm only a few years younger than Xander Bogaerts, and he's someone that's been throughout my life, through middle school, through high school, through college, and now my first professional job. This guy has been through me, been by my side through my ups and downs for the last part of a decade. But now I have to watch him leave the Boston Red Sox and go to the team that I hate the most in the division. It's not the Dodgers, because to me, the Dodgers are like the freaking sun. I know they're going to rise tomorrow. I know the Dodgers are going to be a constant thorn in my side, because they're such a smart organization. They know how to spend money wisely, who to spend money on, and they can go out there and sign any free agent they want. They can trade for any player that they want. They also know how to develop players. So the Dodgers, I'm not that, I hate the Dodgers, but it's I know they're going to be there. They're too smart of an organization not to be. But the San Diego Padres, this is a franchise that feels like the D-backs, a team that is kind of small market, but over the last few years, I've just kind of flipped their philosophy. It's not like they have a great history when it comes to winning or anything like that, but they've been able to flip their philosophy the last few years when it comes to the aggressiveness that they want when it comes to spending money. And AJ Preller does not play around when it comes to spending money. And now I have to see him go out there and sign Xander Bogaerts, one of my three favorite players in baseball, one of my, for non-D-backs players. I did not want to see that bombshell happen where Xander Bogaerts go to the San Diego Padres. Like, that was the worst case, worst nightmare for me personally. He leaves the Red Sox after the Red Sox just mess around with him and his money the whole time. And then he goes to the Padres, the team that I hate the most in the division. It could not have been worse for me. F the Padres. We're not allowed to curse on the podcast anymore, but I will censor it by saying F the Padres, because now you look at that Padres lineup and it's like so many people want to talk about, oh my God, 11 years for 280. They overpaid for Xander Bogaerts and listen, I don't think they overpaid for Xander Bogaerts, but definitely 11 years is too long. Like, they're going to be paying Xander Bogaerts until he's 41 years old. But guess what? Xander Bogaerts is 30 years old, and probably for the next 5 to 7 years, you get to watch Bogarts, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, and Juan Soto in their freaking prime as a fan. I don't care if the last 4 years of that Xander Bogaerts deal is going to be crap. The next 7 years of my life as a fan is watching those four in their prime. Like, we get too caught up in the years. And listen, I do the same thing when it comes to years and the money of these players. But personally, as a fan, like, you have to think about it in terms of real life. Like, I'm 25 years old. Like, I get to watch that core of my team until like I'm hitting my mid 30s. Like, that's what matters to me. Like, so many of these people are like, oh my God, how can you hand out 11-year deal? Like, you're 60 years old. You might not even be around for the back end of the deal. Like, just enjoy the years of the prime you got the player on your favorite team right now. So for me as a fan, it's like, yeah, those long 7+ year deals definitely hurt. Those definitely turn to albatross contract on the back end. But if I got a ready-made team like the San Diego Padres, I just don't care about that. So shout out to all the Padres fans. Shout out to Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres, because he is feeling good right now. And it's so funny because just the day before the Xander Bogaerts signing to the San Diego Padres, I was making jokes on Twitter because of that fake Aaron Judge signing to the San Francisco Giants. I was posing the question on Twitter: what's a worse feeling? The San Francisco Giants thinking that they signed Aaron Judge, or the San Diego Padres thinking that they traded for Max Scherzer? And I felt like it was a pretty even poll. I felt like the feelings were split down the middle. But now, a day later, the San Diego Padres fans are rejoicing because they have Xander Bogaerts in the building. Just absolutely insane. And I told you guys that the Dbacks were not going to get Xander Bogaerts. I never believed that the Dbacks were going to get him. I prayed and I wished casted that was going to happen, but I told you on my Dbacks winter meeting prediction, we were going to get the report. Dbacks made an offer, but were ultimately outbid, and we didn't even get the offer that the Dbacks. We didn't see the report of the offer that the Dbacks put out there, but there was no chance it was 11 years, 280, or coming close to what the San Diego Padres offered. So no chance that Xander Bogaerts was coming to the Dbacks. And I just want to know, like, what the Red Sox are doing. What's their plan of action? Because I talked about yesterday how I didn't like how much they spent on a Japanese player, the most money I think ever for a Japanese position player, like that we never seen. They spent a lot of money on their bullpen this year. I like that, but they're going to let Bogarts walk. They're going to let JD Martinez walk. It's like, what's the plan of action for the Red Sox here? You let these homegrown stars that are Hall of Fame, historic type players like Bogarts and Mookie Betts either walk in free agency, or you trade them before they even hit free agency. Like, I just don't get the plan of attack for the Red Sox. And now it's like how I view the Red Sox among all the teams in the American League. Like, if they signed Xander Bogaerts, like, I would have thought the Red Sox were going to be one of the best teams in the American League next season. Maybe not like a World Series contender, but I would have put them right in that playoff mix. But now I look at the Red Sox in the American League without Xander Bogaerts. I'm like, I definitely have all the playoff teams that made it last year ahead of the Red Sox. And then after that, you can make a real argument for maybe the Twins or the Orioles, two teams that were in the wild card mix until the end, being better than the Boston Red Sox too. And you can even make the case for maybe the Angels, who only finished like 5 wins behind the Red Sox, maybe the Chicago White Sox, who finished with more wins than the Boston Red Sox. Like, there's so many teams now in the American League that you're like, yeah, I probably like that team more than Boston next season. And for the San Diego Padres now, with Xander Bogaerts, like, the Dodgers have still an elite rotation. They're going to have a pretty good lineup, but they've definitely lost some pieces this year. As St. Louis Cardinals, they're making moves with the Wilson Contreras of the deal, with the Wilson Contreras on the market, but I don't know what the rest of that division is doing. Like, yeah, the Chicago Cubs signed Cody Bellinger and they finished 2022 really strongly, but I don't believe in the Cubs. The Brewers seem like they don't really want to win games and they might blow up that rotation. The NL East is stacked, and that top three teams, the Braves, the Mets, and Philly seem like they're going to be in the playoff mix once again. The Miami Marlins, if they can add some offensive pieces, could be in the mix. But right now, the Padres, you definitely put the Padres on tier one of World Series contenders heading into next season. It was a great move by them. It ripped my heart out of my chest, but at the end of the day, the D-backs didn't pony up the money, the Red Sox didn't pony up the money, and the Padres did. So what can you do? Now, for the first time in a while, I want to tell you about this special product that I love to eat after the gym because you got to hit that metabolic window to get your protein in. And there's no better way to get a quick hit of protein that also tastes delicious than eating a Built Bar. Because first off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they're literally the best tasting they're literally the best protein bars ever built. Bars and built in the same sentence almost tricked me. Actually, they did trick me a little bit. But they're revolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate, 17 grams of protein, and shockingly low sugar and calories. Just sink your teeth into that first bite and it'll change your life forever. Just like me. I'm not kidding. There will be a time before you try these new Built Bars, and then after you try it, you'll be like, whoa, I don't remember life before ever trying a Built Bar. And the magical, wonderful time afterwards. You're probably wondering which new flavors my favorite. That's an unanswerable question to say the least because they're all unbelievable and they're all different. So how can you order just one flavor? You got to get yourself a mix box so you can try all the flavors. Built Bar, you got to try it. Get 15% off your order right now by using code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. All right. Let's get back into the podcast. And now with the D-backs not signing Xander Bogaerts, let's look at some other free agents that are probably out the D-backs price range, probably not realistic at all, but would definitely make us feel better if the D-backs are able to go out there in free agency and sign these players. It would make us forget all about the almost Xander Bogaerts experience, which is we probably weren't even an almost, but at least we were considered a serious suitor, I guess. And the first guy I want to talk about is I'm going right off the bat. I'm going for the top. Another shortstop, Carlos Correa. We didn't get Xander Bogaerts, but hey, we saw Carlos Correa just do this short-term overpay with the Minnesota Twins. And it's like, why can't the D-backs do that? Maybe it's another 3-year deal where you give him opt-outs every single season and you make him decide if he wants to come back to Arizona or not, because Carlos Correa still going to be 28 years old. He's 28 years old right now. Career 279 hitter, 836 OPS, averages 28 home runs per 162 game average. Just an absolute stud, 101 RBIs, elite defensive shortstop, maybe the best defensive shortstop in baseball. Definitely going to be expensive. Probably has a price tag around $30 million. I'll check in real quick with Spotrac. But for Carlos Correa, we know he's a winner, projected around $31 million. So we know he's a winner. We know, even though he's still in his late 20s, veteran, probably fits perfectly the D-backs timeline with Ketel Marte and every other player on the D-backs roster. So Carlos Correa, yeah, he's going to be expensive, but if we offer him a 4-year, $120 million deal with a bunch of opt-outs, I wouldn't mind that at all. And it's yeah, we didn't get Xander Bogaerts. Yeah, we got Jordan Lawler coming up as a shortstop, but he's going to be so good defensively. You can move him to third base, and then you got Correa at shortstop. The left side of your infield is going to be nasty, both offensively and defensively. Carlos Correa, I don't think he's a realistic option. He's probably too expensive. He's probably looking for a long-term deal, but considering we already saw last offseason, no one is willing to pony up that long-term money for him. The Twins were willing to do the short-term money, but not the long-term money. If the D-backs can get to a 3 to 5 year deal with opt-outs in it, I would absolutely love Carlos Correa in some Sedona red. Here's another fun one that's definitely not plausible at all, but would just make me so happy. What if the D-backs just went out there and ponied up the money for Carlos Rodon? I think Rodon's going to be very expensive as well, and we probably need to get a guy of Madison Bumgarner's salary off the books before we want to offer a contract to Carlos Rodon, because Carlos Rodon's market value, according to Spotrac, is around $32 million. So he's going to command a lot of money. But I can see Carlos Rodon actually getting less than $32 million, or it's going to be like a deal where it's like $25 million with incentives that bring him up to $30 million, because he's someone that is just such a big injury risk. 2022 was the first time he pitched over 150 innings in a season since 2016. So despite this guy being a top 6 Cy Young vote getter the last 2 years, he's someone that has dealt with a lot of injuries in his past. I think it makes him a big risk. Back-to-back All-Star, led the league in FIP and strikeouts per 9 this last season. I think he's an absolute stud. And if him and Zach Allen are your number 1 and number 2 in your rotation, like, you got one of the best rotations in baseball with the Merrill Kelly as your number 3, then you hope 2 of those 3 young guys can pop in, a Ryan Nelson, Dre Jameson, a Brendan Pfaadt. Like, your rotation will be stacked with Rodon. It would definitely cost a lot of money, but it's a lot easier to pay him if somehow you could get Madison Bumgarner off the payroll. I don't know how you do that, but Carlos Rodon, if we could get him in this rotation, that would be nasty. And the fact that we would steal him from the San Francisco Giants would just make that much sweeter. So I wouldn't mind this deal at all. And the next player I want to talk about is another starting pitcher. Still expensive, around $20 million, but you could probably get him for $10 million less than Carlos Rodon. And Rodon's probably going to be looking for like a 5 to 7 year deal, like a Jacob deGrom level deal. This next guy is already 33, turning 34 in February, and that is Chris Bassitt, who is like your classic number 2, number 3 starter. He would be a perfect rotation complement to both Merrill Kelly and Zach Allen, a low 3s, mid 3s kind of a pitcher, a top 10 Cy Young vote getter, not a big strikeout artist, but someone with great command, great whip, not going to walk a ton of batters, and can eat some innings as well. This was actually his best innings eating season, the first time he's pitched more than 160 innings in his career in a given season. So his arm might actually be fresher than most guys in their mid 30s. Yeah, he might command around $20 million, but I don't think you have to. If you could get him for like a 3-4 year deal, around $20 million, like a 3-year, $60 million deal, I would love that for the D-backs. I think he would be a perfect number 2 in this rotation, and he's got like the perfect kind of makeup that you would want in a starter. Not going to go out there and kill you, not going to walk a ton of guys, not going to go out there and just give a bunch of hard contact and home runs. So I really like a Chris Bassitt, another guy that's probably too expensive and not realistic, but I think he'd be great for this Arizona Diamondbacks team. And then one other player I want to talk about, I don't know if he'll be the final player yet because it depends on how I'm running on time, but how about an old friend that used to play for the Arizona Diamondbacks? How about Brandon Drury, who I think has been kind of an underrated player throughout his entire major league career, because even if you look at his numbers when he played with Arizona, like 2016, 282 average, a 786 OPS, 16 home runs in 134 games. 2017, 13 home runs, 764 OPS, 63 RBIs in 135 games. Like, I think he's a really solid player. His numbers the last 2 years have been very impressive. 2021, he only played 51 games with the Mets, but in that small sample size, he definitely showed enough for the Reds to give him like a full-time opportunity in 2022 on that really bad Reds team that was trying to tank. But the Reds had to trade Brandon Drury at the trade deadline because he was just too damn good, and was like a borderline all-star, because Brandon Drury, 813 OPS last year, 20 home runs, 87 RBIs. Like, Brandon Drury is a right-handed batter who can play all over the field. So if I could get a Brandon Drury, Josh Rojas platoon over at third base, then you play a little Brandon Drury at second base, and you could put Ketel Marte at DH when there's a lefty on the mound. Like, there's just so many things you could do when you have a Brandon Drury and a Josh Rojas in your lineup, because of the defensive versatility of both those guys to play third, second, shortstop, outfield. Like, those guys can just play all over the diamond, and Brandon Drury showed you that he's probably more than just your random utility player that plays 70 games. Like, Brandon Drury should be maybe a starter on a team. I'm not saying Brandon Drury is going to be some all-star that hits 800 plus OPS every single season, but if he's like your 5th or 6th best player in your lineup, like he was for the San Diego Padres last year, like, I think that's just fine for Brandon Drury. Don't have too much expectations for him, because if you think he's going to be one of the leaders in your lineup, then you're wrong. But if he's like your 5th or 6th best player, like I just said, then you definitely think that's gravy in your lineup. And Brandon Drury is definitely someone that would be interested in for the D-backs. And I don't have enough time in segment number 2 to talk about a couple other players that I'm interested in, so I'll keep that in my back pocket for next time. But now let's get into that little report that I saw just searching through the web, because apparently there is one team that has been very interested in the D-backs outfielders over the last 24 to 48 hours, and that is the Houston Astros. And my first reaction when I saw the Astros were interested in a D-backs outfielder was, I had two reactions. The first one was, hell no, because listen, I don't have any beef with the Houston Astros like a lot of other podcast hosts have in the Lockdown MLB network, because they hate the Astros for cheating and for other reasons. And I just don't care that the Astros cheated. I think basically everyone cheats in baseball, so I don't care. I just don't want to help the rich get richer if I don't have to. Like, the Astros already have like an open runaway to the World Series every single season, and I don't want to just trade a D-backs outfielder to that team and make them even better, and then I have to go watch a D-backs outfielder be in the World Series every single season. So that's one reason. The second reason is because we've already been fleeced by the Houston Astros one time. We're still waiting for a Seth Beer to turn into that offensive juggernaut like I thought he could be. Still waiting for JB Burskakis to be the closer of the future. And we're still waiting for Corbin Martin to look like an elite frontline rotation starter. Until those things happen, I don't want to make any more trades with the Houston Astros. The only way I would consider even making a deal with the Houston Astros is if they gave up one of these two starting pitchers. Because I already know they're not giving up a Framber Valdez. But if I got back a Luis Garcia or a Christian Javier for a Jake McCarthy or Alec Thomas, now we're talking. Now it's a discussion, because both of those guys are 25 years old. Both of them are coming off really good season. I think both of them have upsides high enough to be number 3, high-end number 3 starters in your rotation, or at least mid to low number 2 starters in your rotation. And with Zach Gallen, if you had a Zach Gallen and then like a Javier and a Merrill Kelly as the top 3 starters in your rotation, like, I think you have a pretty good rotation and a playoff caliber rotation if that was the case. So I would only be interested in talking to the Astros if I could get a Garcia or Javier back. Otherwise, it's no deal, because Mike Hazen's been talking recently like, yeah, the discussions have been heating up a little bit more, not specifically with Astros, but just around the league. I think he made some analogy that we're past the 50-yard mark, like the players in the deals are becoming more specific in terms of which players off the D-backs other teams want to poach, is the phrase I think I wanted to say, and what other players do the D-backs want to poach from other teams. So apparently to Mike Hazen, we got past the 50-yard mark, but I also have some other teams here written down that I would be interested in making a deal for one of the D-backs outfielders. We always do We always do, did I say trade? We always do fake trades for the D-backs outfielders. So here are some other teams that would be interested in making a deal with for some of these D-backs outfielders. And when I say D-backs outfielders, it's always non-Corbin Carrolls and non-Dalton Varsho's, because reading the reports on this Houston Astros deal, like going to whatever the fan-sided Houston Astros side is, they're like, yeah, we'll just love a Dalton Varsho, who is probably a little overrated, but he could be our 4th outfielder. Like, no. We're not just giving up Dalton Varsho. Every D-backs fan thinks this guy's going to be a star, and we're just not giving him up for basically nothing. So Astros fans, get off the Dalton Varsho, Corbin Carroll train. You can have a Jake McCarthy, you can have an Alec Thomas, but to me, Varsho and Corbin Carroll are untouchable. But let's get into some other teams that would be interested in making a deal with. First team, the Miami Marlins, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast. A Pablo Lopez, I think, would be cool, but really a Jesus Luzardo, I think, would be really interesting, considering he's 25 years old, really good strikeout rate. He's been kind of injured the last couple of years, so I think he's going to be really fresh. There's not a huge amount of tape on him. A Jake McCarthy and some stuff for Jesus Luzardo, I would absolutely love that. How about the Seattle Mariners? I would do a Jake McCarthy or Alec Thomas for maybe a Logan Gilbert or George Kirby. Gilbert a little bit older, like 27 years old, would fit pretty perfectly with the D-backs timeline. George Kirby's like 24 years old. I think he'll be a little bit harder to get considering he's younger, and the Mariners feel like they have a little bit more faith in his upside and potential than a Logan Gilbert. But considering the Mariners already have a former D-back starter in Robbie Ray, why not go after one of their current starters in a George Kirby or a Logan Gilbert for our own rotation? How about the Dodgers? The Dodgers might need some outfield help after not getting an Aaron Judge, after Cody Bellinger walking. Yeah, they got Chris Taylor out there. Like, who else is they got? Mookie Betts, I guess, still out there. I don't even know who the third Dodgers outfielder is. I'm trying to look it up real quick, but the Dodgers could definitely use some extra outfield help. Yeah, Chris Taylor, Mookie Betts, and then it's like, who? Trace Thompson's going to be their other outfielder, or they're going to re-sign Joey Gallo. Yeah, how about you just come get a Jake McCarthy and then give us back a Tony Gonsolin or Julio Urias. Now, Urias might be like a Dalton Varsho level deal, but if I could give up a Jake McCarthy and some other prospects, I don't know, a Dominic Canzone or a Blake or a Blaze Alexander for Julio Urias, I would do that. Or if I could do a Jake McCarthy and like a Buddy Kennedy for Tony Gonsolin, I think I would do that too, because the D-backs could definitely use one more rotation starter, because we can't put all our eggs in the Dre Jameson, Ryan Nelson, and Brandon Pfaadt basket. And then the last team that I would be interested in making a deal for, this low-key might be my dream team, is the Milwaukee Brewers, because they got three legit starters in Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta. And I think Freddie Peralta is the guy that I would try to target because he's the youngest of the three. He's 27 years old, really good strikeout numbers, elite opponent batting average against, 3.58 ERA last year, injury-riddled season, barely pitched, but 2021 All-Star, 144 innings, a 2.81 ERA, double-digit strikeouts per 9 innings from 2018 to 2021. I think Freddie Peralta would just be a nasty, I've been saying that word all day on this podcast, but would be an absolute nasty addition to this D-backs team. And if you had a Freddie Peralta behind a Zach Gallen, just imagine that rotation. So D-backs, please get a deal done from one of the signings I said in segment number 2. And if you are going to trade one of the outfielders, do it with the team, one of the teams that I just mentioned, please. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. That concludes another Free Agent Friday. So that concludes our week. So go catch up on any pods you might have missed this past week. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. Go make your second listen of the day. The Locked On Sports Today podcast, where we go behind the scenes and beyond the scoreboard with insights from our local experts, wherever you get your podcasts, and YouTube, of course. Thank you to everyone. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Deuces.